All right, guys, we're live on the Zack Scriven podcast. We're here with Alex Marcy and Dave Griffith from Corso Systems.
Hey, everybody.
How's it going?
Thank you guys for, coming all the way over to the studios. I'm just going to kind of scoot in here so that way we're nice and cozy.
We're almost like family.
Dude, so tell me about the video content that you guys have been working on for like a few years now.
Yeah.
And, really starting to build a strong brand within, industry, manufacturing, execution systems, and LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. You're doing learning about industrial automation.
Explore industrial automation.
Right.
Explore industrial automation.
Okay. And, Alex, you're doing MES TV.
When I'm not traveling, yeah.
Yeah. You were going strong there early in January.
I was.
I've been waiting for another episode to drop. And
I tried to slow him down because he was going like every day.
Yeah. There will be more. I've been traveling and doing a bunch of stuff to get ready for these 2 weeks of travel that we're doing out here.
Yep.
Yeah. So what do you got going on out here?
Bunch of meetings. We were at Inductive Automation in Sepasoft a couple of days ago. We're hanging out with John, a Corso Systems employee who lives in San Diego.
Hey, John. We'll see you soon.
And we're going to go to Vegas this weekend and see my parents.
Very cool.
For a break, and then some meetings in Bakersfield Monday and Tuesday.
Yep. Some oil and gas stuff in Reno, and our brewery distillery in Reno on that Tuesday.
10 tour.
Oh yeah, and thank you by the way for the vodka. So that's compliments of Corso Systems. So now maybe we could have a shot of vodka while we're doing the podcast, and compliments of Corso. So thank you guys. So let's talk about that ignition and so you're normally out of Chicago though, right? So you're kind of escaping the cold weather down here. Dave, you're a nomad.
I am.
You're traveling all over the world, all over the United States.
At least all over North America. At some point, we'll expand beyond North America and get to the rest of the world, but work kind of keeps me too busy. And definitely. Alex says I can't take a 3-month sabbatical. So that is pretty sick. And, that's one thing that I love following about your guys' content is just seeing your guys' development of, your guys' individual personal brands, and then also Corso as a collective. But Ignition is really one of the platforms that you guys really pride your guys' knowledge on, and a lot of your content is focused on. So let's talk more about that, like OEE. Do you guys use the Sepasoft modules or?
Pretty heavily.
Yeah, we use it a lot. Ironically, yesterday we spent a bunch of time with John. I like to call him the world's foremost expert in Sepasoft, and he blushes and says no he's not, and then we agree to disagree. But we actually sat down with him and we were putting some content together for Sepasoft Solved, where kind of like Ignition Explained, we go through and we talk about like the big modules to help distill to the base level of what MES is and what Sepasoft does, and how kind of one module builds on the next. Okay, so let's talk about that. Like, what were some of the improvements that OEE 2.0
came out with the Sepasoft modules?
It gives you better granularity on your downtime reasons, so you can get, rather than just having a list of reasons, you can have like classes of reasons and then sub reasons below those. So if you're doing like production related items, like something is starved or blocked, or there's maintenance issues, you can kind of group everything, pull in all your maintenance downtime reasons as one group, and then you could drill down into those more deeply, or production reasons or whatnot. And then it allows you to build more complex schemes of your production lines and equipment versus things that have to be in a single, front to back system, ABC, that's all sequential. You could do things in parallel. So you can have parallel processing lines and
so like
different things.
Like one canner, but like 2 fillers or something like that, or
yeah.
So how's that translating into when you're actually deploying? I mean, I'm assuming you guys had done a lot of OE 1.0 systems. You guys gone back and upgraded those customers, or is that a lengthy process? What's that like?
There is a conversion that you can do, but it's kind of a rebuild at some point. So we typically, if customers have been using 1.0, they generally would stay with that because that's what they're familiar with.
Okay.
And then if they add it to a new facility, we'll go to 2.0. But we found that the upgrade path is a little painful there, just given the structure.
It's kind of like a Band-Aid they had to rip off, and now 2.0 is much better in that it's, I've also heard that that's like fully compliant with the ISA 95 model, or?
Yeah, they've definitely improved their ISA 95 support, and are basically building it for the future rather than a tool to get the job done. Now it's a tool that companies can really grow with. And I think it's, having used all the other software out there, I think it's one of the most user-friendly.
So how does Perspective play in with the OEE modules? Do you know is there anything we can find out about that? Is there going to be OEE Perspective components?
There will be.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there will be OEE and MES Perspective components. Since Sepasoft and Inductive are two separate entities, Sepasoft is still waiting for the full release before they develop things. Right now they're in beta on 8.0. And we have a couple customers that want to move to Perspective as soon as it's released.
Or before it's released.
Or before it's officially released. And we actually have a couple production systems in place at the moment on Perspective.
Which is amazing. When you can get through all the bugs and figure out the stuff you need to. Perspective is everything and more that we thought it was going to be last year at ICC.
Yeah, but basically it's going to have us at least initially develop some components for Perspective that we can use in Perspective with all the back-end scripting and coding in the Sepasoft world to support customers until those official components come out. We had talked to Sepasoft about that the other day.
Where do you see the Vision module playing a role in the future when Perspective is fully out of beta and more or less bug-free to the point where you can use it for your everyday projects?
Assuming we don't run into any limitations with some weird edge case functionality, I think Perspective would be the path forward for our facilities and customers.
Yeah.
And I don't know what Inductive would say, but I would see Vision is kind of going away at some point.
Well, so
I'd love to see that.
I read a blog post that Inductive had put out a couple weeks ago talking about Vision versus Perspective, and one of the interesting use cases of Vision that they talked about was for like HMI screens. So if you're developing HMIs that sit on machines, Vision very well still might be the solution for that. And it may be. And like Alex was saying, it's going to depend upon, how everything moves forward of, do we still use Vision for the HMIs, and then do we use Perspective for the SCADA and everything else?
Yeah. I think you brought up an interesting point, because I think in an ideal world, if you have everything kind of networked together, you have your HMIs could theoretically just launch a Perspective app through the browser talking to their main server. When you have the scenario where it's actually like Ignition Edge running locally and maybe it's like an intermittent connection to the central, or the operator has to be able to run it locally, you kind of run into an issue where the licensing model for Perspective isn't conducive to Edge yet. I did ask Inductive, and Carl responded and he said Perspective will kind of be included with Ignition Edge, kind of like a panel view version in 8.1. So it's not, but I did install, I had Ignition 8 Edge, or I had Ignition 7.9 Edge. And when the public beta came out, I upgraded Edge, and it looked like, and I installed Perspective. So in theory, like Perspective, it works on Ignition Edge, but maybe that was just something that they didn't intend on. But as of right now, I think the license is like $4,000 to $5,000, so it doesn't really economically make sense to run that just for one client on the edge.
Right. And that may be a split, like the Rockwell model of FactoryTalk View SE versus ME. I mean, that's kind of, you'll have a split between the OEM and like machine level control versus the server class type things for a large facility.
Yeah.
But I think Perspective will. I mean, that's what the industry's asking for, is HTML5 mobile access and everything that, just given their architecture, doesn't work with Vision.
Right. So even in a, like, let's say, because the other use case would be like a control room where it's like fixed desks and, many monitors, and maybe Perspective doesn't quite have the multi-monitor support and functionality that Vision has. And then maybe Vision also might be better at doing like P&ID type screens, but we're starting to actually see those go away in favor of like dashboards and tabular data, which Perspective lends itself to really well. So how do you see the control rooms? Where do you see them heading towards?
I think from what we've been seeing, a lot of control rooms just become more visualization, and you can even have the operators with their iPads out on the plant floor actually controlling things.
In which case, perspective would be the obvious choice.
Maybe in like a water treatment facility where you have the big bank of 20 screens on the wall, and they're sitting there clicking around on the mouse.
Like refineries, or like a lot of the stuff. You guys follow PAS, Process Automation Solutions, the company that Bill Hallfield, the author of High Performance HMI Handbook.
I think I've seen some of their
They
stuff.
do like it's basically, I think it's their own SCADA software package.
Okay.
And fully compliant with the high performance standards and the alarm management philosophy, and it's geared specifically towards like refineries and energy sector. But they have like 2,000 employees.
Wow.
So it's pretty crazy. They're pretty big. But yeah, something like that where it's just interesting to see the market,
It is. I think we're going to see a lot of the market go farther away from the PNID stuff. And George, one of the Corso guys, put out part 1 of his high performance HMI kind of review. We're big high performance HMI fans and kind of the thought and the theory around it. And we probably own 4 or 5 copies of the book internally. And I think
that's an expensive book too.
It is.
That's what we say every time we talk about it. It is an expensive book. But
Jason got 2 signed copies for free, apparently.
Of course he did.
Because he met the guy at the ARC conference.
Of course he did. But so...
Hey, he'd be a great guest to have on the podcast too. I did a video in 2012 or 13 of a high performance HMI review. It's like one of my first YouTube videos.
I think I remember
back in my Waterhammer days, and I reached out to him, and he actually sent me like a PDF excerpt in an email, and I just remember that being really cool. And so shout out Bill.
No, we love your stuff, and like we were talking internally, and we think that high performance HMI is a really good next step from where most of the industry has been developing and going, but that there's kind of the next layer above that of making it more user friendly. I know when I talk to lots of people, I talk to people about most of the time your operators are not going to really know the difference between a PNID, and like the high performance HMI is a good next step for them. I talk about my Aunt Sue, who worked in a cookie factory for 20 years, and every time I go home, I love you, Aunt Sue, if you're watching this, her phone is always full of pictures. And despite the fact that I've backed it up to Amazon and Google Photos, she always wants me to prove that the pictures are not going to be lost. And so we go through this entire process, and then I'm like, okay, you can delete all of them. She's like, I'm just going to go through and delete the duplicates because I want to be sure I don't lose them. But whenever, like once a week when I log into Facebook, I go and I scroll through my feed, and my Aunt Sue has just filled my entire Facebook feed. And I don't know how she manages to not figure out how her photos are backed up to 2 different cloud facilities, but can go through the Facebook app and share 1,000 things every day.
So she's using Facebook as like a backup, or?
No, she's using Facebook because it's like super intuitive. And so I think we're going to see a lot more of the market go towards the commercial side, the intuitive side, go towards the easy to understand what people are using, on their phones every day. And we're going to see a lot more screens and everything developed like that, and especially with things like perspective and the HTML screens and everything kind of along those lines. I think that's where the market is going to go, from where we are with the PNIDs to the high performance HMI, and then beyond that, I think that's the next layer. And that was one of the interesting conversations that we had based off the review, part 1 that George did.
Yeah. Eric Compton, I had him on the podcast the other day. I posted a clip where he was talking about high performance HMIs and how, everyone focuses on the grayscale aspect, but they seem to gloss over the levels, screen hierarchy, where you have like overview, and then, like sub-process overview, sub-process detail, and then, like your faceplates. And, I definitely agree that, we need to be kind of pushing more towards that standardization. And I think with perspective, hopefully, especially with it being compatible with Git, we might see more open source libraries where you can maybe, download some standard content for perspective and kind of get up and running really quickly. And, you're just a few Git commands away from loading an app. And so tell us more like about what you guys have learned about perspective in the months that it's been in beta.
So we learned that John really doesn't like being in front of the camera because we had to like twist and break both of his arms yesterday to get him to tell us about Zepisoft. And by the time we were done with video 5, he was done talking about it and didn't want to talk about perspective. But no, like, so we're super excited about perspective. There are obviously the bugs that we've been working through for the last, I don't know, what's it been out since like October, November? We had the beta. Like, there are obviously bugs and everything, but you're going to get that with the A beta, and I think we're to the D. But John was saying even a couple of days ago when he was developing the application for production, you know, he was running into issues, and he downloaded the latest nightly build at like 8 o'clock, and by 11 o'clock or midnight, he was able to fix, you know, some trending and some other stuff that he had run into issues with. So kind of overall, I think they're going in the right direction. I know you've done a lot more development than I have.
Quite a bit with it. I think it's more a mind shift from vision to perspective because it's a web-based architecture. So instead of, you know, having windows, you have views and sessions instead of clients, and thinking about it in terms of just the different naming convention and the architecture, I think is the biggest hurdle. And once you're in there and you understand, instead of having custom properties down in the little property editor, it's a JSON object that you can edit.
Yeah.
You know, it's just kind of thinking about...
And it's contextual based on what you're selecting. Yeah. It's definitely... I was playing around with it, and it's very cool that you can just add dynamic data properties and nested objects. And
Alex, in his background, was a web developer. So it's like going home to Alex.
Yeah, so coming from a web development space, it's exactly like anything you would see. I mean, it's built with React. So having done a bunch of MVC framework type stuff.
Model view controller.
Yep. With like ASP.NET or Rails, or depending on what flavor of computer you're running on, it's pretty much the same thing you would see in the web world. So, you know, we were on a coffee with Kevin thing a while ago, the Premier Integrator call, and the question I had was like, how do we get like JavaScript or jQuery libraries into perspective where we could get something like D3.js
That'd be amazing.
For trending.
Yeah.
And it's the concept there is you have to build a module and import it the same way you would with an Ignition module to import a Java library. But I think that's where the power of it will really come in. And our customer we were talking to yesterday did a drone flyover of their facility using, was it Pix4D mapping?
Phil, our customer, is big into drone zones, like 4 of them, does like GSI mapping.
Wow, that's sick.
For a bunch of different facilities. And so he said he shot like 400 pictures a second, 400 pictures a minute, uploaded it to the cloud, the Pix4 mapping.
400 pictures a minute?
Something like that.
The high resolution.
Super high resolution. And then he was able to, by the time he got back to the office and he had pushed it to the cloud, it had all rendered. And then he puts on his HoloLens and can literally spin around and see the entire facility.
It generates like a 3D model of the whole facility and all the buildings and everything. And we just added a web component into perspective and dropped that whole site in.
Yep.
And now you get a 3D model of a facility in perspective in like 10 minutes worth of work.
Yeah. I think it might be the most amazing thing we've ever done.
Now the next level would be like putting contextual information inside of that view, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like AR, or I guess in that scenario, it would kind of be more VR.
It would be like VR and being able to lay over like the GIS and the different flares and the different, you know, methane gases levels and stuff like that to it, and then VR and everything else.
Where do you guys see the biggest room for growth for Corso Systems in 2019 and beyond?
Taking on bigger and better MES projects. I think perspective is kind of paving the way for some of that. I think if you Google it, it's us and Intellect that has the top hits on perspective. I think we have more, but sorry, Walker.
Yeah.
Walker, you could be sitting right here next to us.
But no, I think, and we were even talking to Inductive, and that's kind of their push. We've also been looking at like the FreeWave radios and the Opto22 devices.
FreeWave has Ignition Edge on board now, too.
Yeah, we've got a couple of the radios. We've got a bunch of stuff coming out with that, with some of the Edge licenses and some of the stuff that we're building on Edge with those radios. And then we've got a Bedrock OSA remote.
Yeah, that thing is sweet. How do you like that?
We love it. We've got a bunch of really cool stuff.
Does it have Edge on board?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I asked Colby this, and he wasn't sure either, but I know there had always been talk about like even having Bedrock being able to be programmed from like within Ignition, or like have it like kind of more, I guess, tightly integrated.
I mean, I think that the Bedrock automation flows really well with kind of the Ignition platform and like the Opto 22 and kind of
from a business model perspective.
From a business model, because, you know, Inductive is, you know, a newer software company, and these guys are newer hardware companies, and everyone is pushing the bounds of what we thought was possible 2 years ago or 18 months ago. And now we're able to go in and do things completely differently than we were in the 70s when we started installing Modicon PLCs to replace relays and timers.
Yeah, that's interesting. You know, Walker, he definitely, he's you know, very excited about Perspective. He's developing it, but he's definitely he's made it known that he doesn't want to necessarily push it out to his customers yet. He's going to develop their own. They have a MES product. They're going to develop it in Perspective, and but you know, while you guys may have him beat in Perspective hits, I think IIoT and Industry 4.0 is really like his main focus.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's freaking bloody passionate about it too. It's crazy.
Yes, you can see it on the videos.
You spend a little bit of time with him, and then you know you start, you know, like singing the same song too.
No, and like I think what you and Walker and everyone over there are doing is absolutely fantastic, and like I love the stuff that you guys are talking about, Industry 4 and IIoT, and like there's definitely a need for that in the space. And, you know, we do a bunch of work in the MES space, we do a bunch of work in the Perspective space, and kind of that realm, but there is so much opportunity to talk about in automation or in whatever we want to talk about in this industrial sector. You know, we could have 1,000 creators literally creating content, and each of them could have their own niche, and that's what we need. I know.
Yeah, a little bit of co-opetition, collaboration.
So like when I came on board to Corso a couple of years ago, I'm like, okay, how do I learn about MES? And Alex is like, well, you just got to learn it. And like that's one of the big things that I've noticed, and part of the reason that we're pushing to push MES content out there is because there's not a lot of content, is that short of, you know, take the Corso blog out of there, you know, you've got some Inductive stuff, you've got some Sepasoft stuff, you've got some Factory Talk stuff. You know, I'm sure Siemens and Wonderware and those guys all have a little bit of it. But
Vertex been doing good at putting a lot of blog content, and they're starting to do more video. I saw Roger Larson did a video on Seek. He pulled up Seek Workbench and kind of
saw that video.
Did like a what if analysis, and so that always gets me excited to see more video content and just content in general, which the industry needs a lot more of.
It does, and like there's so much opportunity to talk about what we do, and like you go to a conference and everyone's talking about how do we grow, how do we diversify, how do we find more people who weren't born into what it is that we do, or didn't like trip across integrator and be like, this is a cool place, let's go work here. Like, how do we find those people? And I mean, in today's day and age, you have to put out content. You have to allow for people to figure out what it is that we do so that they can figure out that they might want to do it. You know, most of the time you go to a conference or you go to a recruiting fair and no one knows what industrial automation is. You know, 95% of the people we talk to in the industry don't know what MES stands for. And part of that is the learning and explaining. And so you have to go through and learn and explain, and we need to push it out so there's more than, you know, 2 or 3 or 5 people making content about industrial automation, because we need more people to come into doing what we do.
And that's the other thing is, you know, to, like, let's say you're looking for an integrator and you're trying to go through digital transformation, and, you know, an integrator may, you know, maybe they're pretty good at doing systems and, you know, they're SCADA, MES experts, but if their website is like in the 90s or their marketing style is in the 90s, they haven't digitally transformed their marketing, then they haven't had a mindset shift from like the core out. So while they may, you know, maybe they build an all right system, like they haven't fully adopted that digital transformation from a holistic perspective, which includes marketing, communication, which includes, you know, technologies and platforms, and you know, also internal structure, organization structure. And so I think that is telling, you know, that, you know, look at what kind of content they're putting out. Like, look at what kind of great content Corso is putting out. You know, you can do your own research before you even call these guys and see that they are industry experts, you know. they're fun to work with. Like you see Dave's personality, you see Alex's his grit and his expertise and his experience, and just like your personality, right? Like you're just a very straight shooter, and you're just like, you know, you're kind of like your geek, and you're kind of like your nerd, you know. You know, you
should meet the rest of Corso and then tell us if we're the geeks and nerds.
Okay, yeah, let's maybe you start seeing more of them on your guys' content.
We're trying. I think like stuff like this, and like, so whenever like Evan put out a post talking about Bedrock, and he went to the training and he talked about kind of their platform and stuff like that, and the folks from Bedrock absolutely loved it, and you can see links and posts and cross posts kind of all over the internet, and you know, that's amazing. And George puts out a high performance HMI handbook, and you know, there are lots of comments and thumbs up and likes, and you know, everyone, you know, being positive towards other people, posting videos, posting blog posts is going to help convince the people writing to write more, which is what we need. We need people who normally aren't going to write blog posts to share their insane amount of knowledge and do more videos. And that's what we need. And I see, you know, with the Y video and with everything else, and, you know, I put out a resources video and I talked to 20 people who are putting out fantastic content that I didn't know about until I posted that video. Yeah. And so now I get to, you know, see everyone and interact with everyone, and that helps push me, and hopefully, you know, the comments and the support from my end helps push them to continue to do more.
Who are some people on LinkedIn that, you know, you've been getting a lot of support from?
You know, LinkedIn kind of overall is absolutely fantastic. You know, you are all over the place, and you must know like 400,000 people on LinkedIn.
I joked when I go to LinkedIn, I actually think I'm at like ZackScriven.com or something.
Zack Scriven media feed.
But even like Sean Terrell put out a video I saw last night talking about the TP link. That was cool.
That was cool just to see him like in the panel with his gear on.
Hat? Yeah, I love the hard hat.
That was a powerful video.
And I think it is. It's just like get your phone out and do something. Don't worry about being great at it, because everybody sucks at it at first. And like we say at Corso, be comfortable being uncomfortable. It's
some of our first videos are definitely cringeworthy.
Oh, absolutely.
So do you remember the first video series we put out? It was the Intelligent Automation Pyramid. Alex wrote a bunch of posts for like control engineering, and then I took those and overlaid them onto like Keynote and like screen share, and I'm not even sure my face is on those first videos. And you like look at them,
so you kind of remix their content.
Yeah, so
that's the best way to make content.
We remixed the content that Alex had created, and we put it as a blog post, and we put it as, you know, a series of videos to kind of like.
So you kind of did like a webinar or something.
Yeah, I think we did like 6 or 7 different videos. One for each of the blog posts that we put out.
There was like 6 articles or 7 articles about the automation pyramid.
Yeah.
And like,
similar.
I mean, this is years ago.
Similar to kind of like the Purdue
also,
model.
You're just a side note. Your DCS versus SCADA videos. What is MES video? Like those are years ago. They're like in the tens of or 50,000 views. Some of them.
So our biggest view is an MES Essentials webinar. We were joking about it. It gets like 2,000 or 3,000 views a month. It was the first video Alex had ever put out, and we were literally driving over here, and I'm like, Alex, we have to redo this, because it is just like, it is mildly cringeworthy.
And it's just a screen recording of a webinar that we did multiple years ago with like 10 people watching it.
Oh yeah, but we literally had someone comment on us thanking us for it this very morning when we were driving over here.
Wow,
and like that's awesome. And so you got to make video realizing that, you know, I'm not going to go. You're not going to go viral making IoT videos in 2019. You know, but it could be a video that 3 years from now has 200,000 views. Yeah. You have to look. It's the long game.
Yeah, and that's the one thing that I really had to embrace is, as a content creator, is just realizing that each individual video may not like move the needle, but it's a stepping stone to actually getting to where you do have that reach, and you do have that skill on camera, you do have that presence and audience, and so it's really kind of crucial just to fight through, like just to push through that, and you guys have done really well for that. And so it's cool to like, what do you see driving, like what, as far as like business goals, like as a marketing initiative, what drives the most, like what do you find the most valuable in terms of your guys' marketing efforts? Is it the blogs? Is it, email list? Or
so I think kind of for us, it's the combination. And if you're going to embrace, like we were talking about, we help facilities go through a digital transformation. So we can't have a website that is the static thing from 1994. I love you guys at Siemens, but seriously, can you please update your website?
Or the industrial mall catalog?
Oh, yeah. Like you go to the Wayback Machine. It's literally the exact same thing as like 94 or 98. Wow. I have a blog post where I took a screenshot of that. But no, like I think you have to embrace the the social media and the video and the blog post, and you have to kind of continue to put yourself out there, because we're gonna see more and more people are going to spend time looking online. I mean, nowadays, if I go to Google a place and they don't have like a Facebook page or a website, I'm probably not going to show up to your restaurant, or I'm probably not going to show up to your store, because it's like, what do we really know about you? And so continuing to build that presence, and it may not be video for everyone. It may not be a blog post for everyone, but find a way that is, true to the person that you are. And, that's something that, we've kind of veered a little bit left and right to figure out, okay, who are we as a company, as Corso, and who are we as individuals? And then how do we go and show the world who we are? And that's why you kind of see, the blog posts and everything else veering a little bit. Sometimes, there were times where we went 3 or 4 talking about us or our cultures, or like the Warbag series that we did, which was actually a lot of fun. New Warbag videos coming soon. As soon as our editor.
Yeah, I did see one of those where you kind of go through one of your employees' gear bags.
Yeah, so I started it, and I think we got a couple of good comments. And then I think Alex did one, and so we had the first 4 or 5 employees all did a Warbag video. And then we were at Corsmiths about a month ago, and we've almost doubled in size since that point. And so we have 3
since a month ago.
No, since a year and a half ago, since we did the Warbag videos. No,
holy shit.
Yeah. No, and so we have 3 new Warbag videos, kind of remixed, where we've got a couple of people going through their bags in a different format to find ways to kind of show the rest of the world who you are.
And I think it's important, and I know, like, if you listen to Gary Vaynerchuk, he says be authentic and just be yourself, and like document, don't create. It's really be authentic. And if somebody doesn't want to work with us because they don't like our personality, they will know that before they call us. Because,
you will completely not call us.
You know who we are from the videos, right?
Yeah.
And it's, be authentic. And if you're somebody that is uncomfortable in front of a camera, but you're comfortable writing, do a blog post.
Yeah.
And, some things may be better to demonstrate in video versus words, but
you don't have to put your face on video if you don't want to.
No, it's be authentic to yourself, and then whatever you're excited about and what you want to talk about. And like, obviously, I'm not going to talk about things like I'm not going to talk about playing guitar on the Corso site, because that's not relevant to it. But within the lane that
Corso Systems 2, where Alex plays guitar.
You have you play guitar?
Yeah.
That's right. You had one in your I think in the backdrop of your video or something.
Yeah, we got the picture with the guitar. That's like the Rorschach drawing. That's a Vegas themed.
Oh, that's right. Cool. That's right. Yeah, so it's kind of the combination of it all. I mean, that would almost be like asking, let's say you have a fishing net. It's like, okay, which knot caught the fish? It's kind of a weird question. Like, someone might come across one video, they may not even remember it, but then the YouTube algorithm kind of learns their behavior and realizes, hey, maybe they might be interested in this MES video, and eventually over time they're just, hey, I know Dave, I know Alex, I don't really know how I know them. I just stumbled across their videos, and now here they are in my garage, and we're just having a podcast.
Well, and a lot of it too is, if we have a video covering everything that we do.
Yeah.
When a customer calls, it's like, hey, do you have an example of this? Like, here, go watch the video on your own time. Yeah. You don't feel like we're selling to you. You can go check anybody else's stuff out and kind of get a feel. Are we true? Are we talking about reality, or are we selling snake oil here? It's like,
and a lot of what we do isn't like selling what we do. It's showing people what we do, what we've done, talking about the industry as a whole, trying to give back, and that generates kind of organic people coming and talking to us about MES and various other things. Like a year ago, Alex and I were in DC, and we were getting ready to go do something, and I had a guy call me, and literally the first thing he asked me is, are you drinking coffee? And like, I had never talked to him before. He's like, are you drinking coffee? And I'm like, I actually just got rid of my last coffee strange person who I've never talked to, whose name I don't know yet. But no, it led to a whole bunch, like a great conversation. And, that's, those conversations you have to have. We were talking about SPC, and, at some point we may help integrate an SPC at their facility because that's what they're looking for, but they may be 18 months out from doing that.
Right. So it's interesting you brought that story up because I was just going to ask, like, let's say you get a customer, finds one of your videos, they call you up, hey, Dave, I want you guys to come take a look at my system and upgrade it. Like, how does that customer lifecycle journey look like for your guys' typical job with client?
Yeah, so like a lot of what we do, because we typically build higher end systems that are going to be more costly than are going to be basically like a CapEx expenditure, is we have a conversation. We probably set up a teleconference to make sure we're talking to the right people, to make sure that they know what we're showing, what we've built, to make sure it's in line with their vision and what that looks like. And then we will go out and generally have a conversation with them on site and then kind of find the paths to move forward. We find that like video and blog posts and everything kind of helps us start to make that personal connection. So like they know what we look like before we walk into the facility, and like you have started to build that relationship. But at the end of the day, nothing is better than going and shaking a person's hand and walking around their facility and like letting them explain the pain points and having a face-to-face conversation. Video comes close, but nothing is better.
Yeah, it's pretty much, we get a call or an email. Mm-hmm. We go through the Corso demo server and show them, here's what we've built, here's the pain points we've experienced, here's kind of the process. And we describe, if you work with us, here's what it looks like, and here's what we're going to do going forward, and set expectations.
Yeah.
And then go have a meeting with them. And I would say I don't think we've ever gotten a project without a face-to-face. I mean, it's pretty rare that would happen. Right. And then figure out their pain points and also understand their process and their culture. Because a lot of the work that we do, you can run into culture shock issues.
That is a good point.
And understand, if we work with this customer, are there issues where somebody's going to be combative that we need to just address and make sure that everybody's on board. And then send out the proposal and then do whatever round of negotiations we need to do to seal the deal, and then execute the project.
I think talking a little bit more about the culture is important. And I think, Zach, you and Walker have talked about it some, or like touched on it when talking about like IIoT or Industry 4 or digital transformation, is that, it is a complete mind shift of, the super manual processes to go through this transformation to make your facility better. And you have to have either everyone on board, or you have to have the buy-in of the top level people to force everyone else to get in line. And it's not necessarily easy. It is hard. There are going to be struggles, but you have to go in with the knowledge and forethought that you're going to come out and you're going to be better as a company.
Yeah. Have you seen a company go like full paperless? Like not a single piece of paper?
No.
I'm not sure that is.
Why is there such a strong hold on paper?
I love my paper.
I mean, we have one customer that like wanted to go paperless, and they had iPads for doing data entry, but they still, and we did the schedule in Ignition and pulled everything in.
They still printed it out.
And they literally printed out the schedule and handed it to the operator. And it's like, he has 5 computers right in front of him and 2 iPads. Like, take one of and 2 of the computers showed the same screen on them for God knows what reason. Like, just put the schedule on there, and he can click on it and start everything from there. But they wanted the piece of paper.
I think it's like that mentality of wanting to physically hold something.
Yeah.
Like I know I write a lot on paper, and like I enjoy the act of writing and going through that process. I think kind of the paper is the safety net, if you will, because I don't know if it's they don't trust the technology, or if it's we've done it for 20 years or 30 years or 60 years this way. I'm going to get my piece of paper and I'm going to do what the paper says. And I think that's part of, if you can get to the point where the only piece of paper you have in your facility is a duplicate of 1 or 2 of your screens and it's the schedule, you're doing a really good job.
Digitized.
You're doing a really good job. And you have to look at it and it's like, okay, do I have to have the conversation with my scheduler and my operators that we're just not going to do this? Or do I spend 5 cents every day and let them have that safety net, and they're already doing everything else on the computer?
What about like reports versus real-time dashboards? Like a report printed out at the beginning of the morning from yesterday's production, and then are you seeing like companies starting to shift more towards like, okay, let's look at it in real time?
I would say companies are more towards the real-time shift, and then it's more of a, if you're bringing multiple facilities together and you need to print out the thing for the meeting in the morning, it's more of just a logistical challenge at that point.
Yeah.
But I think most companies, once they have the tools and the capabilities, especially in the ignition world, where they don't have to pay for the extra clients, because if you're in a Rockwell or a Wonderware or Siemens world,
this report worth $2,000 a year.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you have to buy the extra client for the desktop computer to open it up, or you can just generate a printout automatically.
Do you think they're starting to go more towards unlimited clients, like more of a, I guess, web-based kind of architecture?
Like the non-ignition people?
Right.
Not from my discussions with any of them. They say ignition's killing us in the market. Why are they winning? I'm like, here's the list. And I've literally talked to people, and it's like, if you want to do what ignition is doing, here's what you think the problem is. And that is not what the problem is at all. It's not Java. It's that you have an old business model and you haven't updated with the times. And I understand that like that's a hard thing to do for those people to swallow, but
they're huge companies.
Yeah. And if they're publicly traded, there's also, you know, to say we're going to go from selling individual licenses to unlimited clients, like that probably would hurt their stock price, which like,
and I mean, Rockwell has 70% of the market?
I'd say Aviva's done a better job about shifting than Rockwell has. And, you know, maybe a lot of that was accelerated by their merger of Schneider Electric Software and Aviva Legacy is what they're now calling it, which was kind of like they were in like the ship industry and kind of more engineering and design software. So that partnership really made sense in that you can actually now design a facility and then run it into operations in Wonderware and then run it through asset like lifecycle and analytics. So they kind of have all the stages of an asset lifecycle in one software loop. So that's, at least from my perspective, unique to the market. But I mean, like I saw Wonderware is starting to do like more unlimited, like Walker calls it the 5, unlimited clients, unlimited tags, unlimited screens. I think, you know, like their unlimited nature. You can download it and try it and run it for 2 hours for free without ever talking to anyone. And also it's completely open. You can talk to any database, any, you know, REST protocol, OPC, you know, you name it. And he says that's a recipe for success in Industry 4.0.
Yeah.
And the other company that he says that does that really well is FactoryStudio or Tatsoft FactoryStudio. So that's why he always name drops FactoryStudio. It's so funny. I always get a kick out of it because he's like, you know, whether you're doing your ignition, your SCADA system in Ignition or your MES in FactoryStudio, like he always like just has to name drop FactoryStudio whenever he talks about Ignition. So that's kind of funny. But you guys looked at FactoryStudio at all?
We have. Alex is a big .NET developer fan, and so it's similar to Perspective. It was kind of like going home for Alex.
I mean, honestly, the first time I heard about it was from one of Walker's posts.
So. He's doing a good job at marketing.
Yes.
So I've looked at it.
Is he getting some cut?
We're not affiliates with them at all.
You guys should really get on that, Zach.
I think that's kind of it's kind of like you got to have the horse before the cart. Like we're putting ourselves out there as that platform, and then maybe those partnerships will, like you guys have seen, I've done work with Flow.
Yes.
So that model is starting to kind of prove itself. I mean, obviously, if you guys heard about FactoryStudio through that content, that proves its value right there. But I think just from him sharing his own knowledge and his own value, that's what he's sharing is that, hey, you know, everyone loves Ignition, but look at this FactoryStudio. It's like Ignition and .NET.
That's exactly how we describe it.
I mean, I would say, in my experience, coming from when I first got into integration, and it's a bunch of people that have been there for 30 or 40 years, and we're just kind of huddled with our own information. We don't share anything. Yeah. There's no website. There's nothing on the website if there is one, to companies like us and Intellect and Vertec and everybody that's sharing.
Open community,
And even we collaborate with other integrators where it's like, we don't want to get into this part of a project, but that's what you guys do really well.
Yeah.
Let's just partner.
Like if you ever have a clear SCADA system, you know, the guys at JPI Solutions, Dustin, they're, you know, primary platform is like ignition to you guys is like clear SCADA to them.
Yeah.
They're starting to do more ignition work and they're going through IU, but it's actually kind of crazy. It's like 2019 and there are integrators out there that maybe you've never even heard of ignition or they're just now learning it. And it's like, wow, where you guys been?
I know. And like, but I think that's the amazing thing about,
because we're actually starting to talk about it more.
Yeah. And I think it's part of, you know, getting away from that very siloed industry and like the very siloed integrators where I know Walker talked about it, where most people get spit out within 6 months, but if you make it past the 6 months, you're like the senior engineer, and you finally get to design something and may actually make enough money to live off of that. I mean, but like moving away from that is important, and we view like sharing the information as it's only going to benefit everyone. You know, maybe we help bring people onto the Corso team, or maybe we help, you know, show people what we do or learn more about it, because more people integrating in, you know, ways like we do, or more software is getting built and pushed out there, and more end users using those software is only better for everyone.
Yeah.
There's so much opportunity.
Yeah, there's enough work for everybody out there. And like your video on scarcity mindset, it's like, don't feel like you have to withhold all this information, because there's enough out there for everybody.
Yeah.
When I first started my SI, that's how I felt, man. I just felt like, why would I have a competing integrator, you know, over to be on my show when I'm trying to grow my own business and, you know, I'm trying to build my own retirement account. Yeah. Like it just, I think it's natural to think in that, you know, kind of, I guess it's kind of instinctual. It's, it's just kind of like, oh, you know, I got to make sure, rather than going open. And, you know, the way I look at it sometimes too is like in digital content, or, you know, it's kind of like this, or just life in general, like the fabric of reality is like you kind of have all these points in time. And if you stake your claim in something, from there on out, it just kind of propagates like a wave. It kind of spreads and grows because it's an infinitely growing framework. It's an infinitely growing reality. So as long as you like just stake your claim, kind of focus on nurturing that, it can kind of grow and propagate out. And everyone can see, everyone can experience growth, because we are in a expanding reality. So yeah, man, thanks.
And no matter what, the sales guys are all going to be selling somebody else's stuff in 3 years anyway. So
you trying to get rid of me on the live on the podcast?
No, but like if you look on LinkedIn, it's, you know, somebody used to work at Siemens, now they work at Rockwell. They used to work at Wonderware, now they work at Siemens. It's like, you know,
and then they go back to working for
Schneider. The CEO of Viva used to be a PTC guy, I think.
The names on the business cards change. The faces and the people in the industry never change.
It's a small world out there.
Once you're in it for life.
Yeah. So, gosh, I was gonna say something. Yeah. Oh, so about the like affiliate marketing, and you know, you guys are kind of starting to do some similar work like that, where you're getting brands to send you product, and you know, kind of like how you're talking about, like
after we pay for it though. We need to talk offline then.
Okay, that's fine. Let's just say, in theory, how would something like that work? Like how would you have felt if FactoryStudio was contributing to that effort? How would you see something like that working?
I would say if I were to know that FactoryStudio was paying Walker to say FactoryStudio, as long as he believes in it, I would be on board with that. And like, I don't think it's any different than even if FactoryStudio is giving him leads, like, you know, I think that's no different than if we get a lead from Siemens, we're not going to go undersell them and say you need to use Ignition, unless that is like the absolute right case. So it's kind of try to be as above board and have integrity as much as possible in those scenarios, understanding that if you're calling a distributor and they give you a bunch of names of integrators, the integrators are probably going to push that solution.
Right. Because, they're going to be integrators that these people have worked with, and they know.
I think that's why Walker doesn't accept vendor leads, because he doesn't want to be under that obligation to be like, oh, well, you know, Ignition sent me this lead, but I really think, you know, maybe FactoryStudio might work better for this client, you know, so.
And I would say a lot of the stuff, like with the easy automation, I was more curious about that PLC. I did the MQTT video. It's like, I'm going to just go buy it and play with it.
That's a huge platform. I like it.
I think that, you know, for us and for like lots of people, there's a difference between going out and spending $150 or $200 on a PLC to try out and going and dropping, you know, $5,000 or $6,000 or $10,000 on some various other hardware or software, and like being able to, as you said, Walker calls it the Big Five, being able to like go and download that for free and play around with it for unlimited 2-hour free trials is like absolutely amazing. And so if people want to send us hardware and they want us to give a like unbiased review, we'll give an unbiased review. I mean, we as a whole don't really do negative reviews, and so if it's a piece of junk, you may never see it, and it may just get sent back to them because we're not the people who are going to go out and say negative things.
Right. This doesn't fit our customers.
Yeah, like
it makes no
our
sense.
brand is not a negative brand. Our brand is a positive brand. We want to talk about good things. We don't want to say this thing is a piece of junk, because for someone else's application, it could be absolutely fantastic. And so we're more than happy to kind of take a look and look at everything and, you know, give unbiased reviews, put it into demo stuff, put it into, you know, maybe production if there's an opportunity to drop something in there and see how it works.
And I think if you're, like, to date, we've never taken payment for anything we've done, and I don't see a reason why I would start doing that.
No. I mean, that would be kind of awesome.
Well, you guys joked around about it. You're like, well, this is not, they're not paying me to say this, but they could be.
They could, yes.
That's actually from Alton Brown's podcast. He says that a lot. So
we actually said it like 20 times over the course of one batch of taping, and I think we cut most of it.
And I think that's the, you know, we're not saying this because they're paying us. We're saying it because we believe it.
Yeah.
And this is, if we're saying this is the best product for this particular use case, and we believe in this and we stand by it, that's because that's like the honest to God truth. And
we all have at least 30 more years in this industry. I don't think any of us are going to put our names on a bad product for a couple $100 or whatever
and I
it
think,
looks like.
You know, like if we're putting content out there for Bedrock, or I'm taking part in the WonderLogic certification course and did a blog post for them about the, you know, they said, hey, if you like the software or if you don't like the software, can you do something just to help us get our marketing out there?
Right.
And they're sharing it, so that gets our name out there along with their name. So now,
yeah, that was cool. Let's talk about WonderLogics.
It's interesting.
It is.
Still in the early stages of the technology.
In the early stages. I think they're on like version 0.93 right now.
Yeah, I've been looking at them for like the last 13 or 14 months after you put the blog post out.
It's a great theory.
It's a great theory.
It's a great concept.
The part for me where the marketing didn't match reality was, the way I understood it was, you could just use their software and that was all you needed, but you actually have to have Logix 5000 or Studio 5000 to download to the processor.
Okay.
They're working on that to where you eventually will be able to just use their software and do real-time monitoring in their software.
And I know they're working on like Siemens.
They're working on a Siemens release, so you right now it's just for compact and ControlLogix processors.
The code that it outputs, can you select what it is, or is it in structured text, or?
Everything that I've seen is all in ladder.
Yeah, I think it's
I don't know if there's
object-oriented input. You go and you do the drop-downs and you tell it what you want, and it outputs as ladder logic.
Yeah.
What kind of processes do you see it working best in?
I think, like right now, their push is for water, wastewater, and things that are maybe a little simpler. I wouldn't. I'm sure there's a limit as far as like a super complex process that you could break with their
obviously there's some trade-off.
But I think something that's not a super high-speed complex manufacturing process, like anything like packaging related, you could use it with it.
I think people who natively don't speak ladder logic or PLC programming, most of their
Could you do a CIP? You could do a CIP system?
I would say so.
I would think so. I think, you know, most people who this is, you know, the beginning of down the PLC path, it's a really good, I mean,
rabbit hole.
Well, it's a good rabbit hole, because most of the people who are really good hardcore ladder logic, you know, ninjas or whatever we want to call them, they're not going to go through WonderLogics. They're just going to sit down and they're just going to code out the ladder logic because that's what they know.
Right.
And
the part of it that's good, though, is like if we had a plant manager who doesn't know anything about ladder logic or PLCs, he just wants the process to work, we could hand him the printout from a WonderLogics project.
And the documentation.
And it literally says, like, in the case of such and such thing going low, do this. In a different case, do that. Like, it spells it out in sentence form.
Okay.
So it really generates a control philosophy that you could go through and like understand the process, and you could take that documentation that's automatically created and
wow, that's cool.
Like go up and watch a process happen and follow it.
That's pretty valuable beyond just generating the source code.
No, it is. I think the documentation may be the best part, or it adds the most value.
Yeah, and I think even for maintenance folks or somebody who doesn't want to learn ladder logic or any structured text or function block or anything, once they have their runtime version out, you could watch the process running in the WonderLogic Studio, and it's a lot easier to understand for somebody who doesn't know programming to follow what's going on in the logic.
Now, what if you had a hybrid where like certain processes were developed, using WonderLogics, and then maybe other parts, like maybe some communication to some third-party device, you had to do that in Studio 5000. How does that play together?
I think that would play well together because basically they generate a Studio 5000 project with all your tags and I/O and logic. So once you have that, you could easily take and add communications.
Right. But then like would that sort, like if you went back and edited WonderLogics, would it then overwrite the source file, or how would you maintain that?
Probably at the moment.
I think it does, right now but we haven't.
Right now it's designed for you would use WonderLogics and then generate your program, and then it would probably just overwrite anything you did.
I think questions like this is what they're going to continue to build
based on user feedback.
Yeah, based on user feedback, and they're going to continue to build these functions so that they can continue to do more complex things.
Okay.
But I also see, part of their training class and some of the projects they've done are like in the energy sector. So I think a lot of that where you have a solar company that has to do some basic control on a system, but they don't want to learn ladder logic and all that. That would be a good use case for them.
So it'd be ideal for someone that can meet all their needs with WonderLogics, then they don't necessarily even need to, besides downloading, they would just maintain their source code with WonderLogics.
Because a lot of those, you could set up they have like Modbus devices that'll read from all the solar equipment. So you could have your communications as a separate entity entirely and just pull data out of the PLC. But you could even ask the question of how do you deal with like ProSoft modules and WonderLogics?
Right.
Like, that just doesn't exist yet. Yeah. But I think they're doing a cool thing, and I think that is a place part of the industry is going to go. I don't think it replaces like hardcore PLC programming in any way. Sense. But
someone actually reached out to me when I was going to Dubai. They're like, hey, when you're flying through Istanbul, come over to it's a few hour flight from Istanbul, and we'll fly you out here and you can check it out. And I didn't see it until the LinkedIn message until after I got back, and I'm like, oh wow, because he reached out to me again, and I was considering doing the training, but I've just been really at full capacity, so I didn't do that, but. I did appreciate them considering reaching out to me to help put their product out there. So that's why I'm more than happy to talk about it and
there are feedback. A bunch of people in the States, and they're at a bunch of the events and fairs. I sat down with a couple of them at Automation Fair. I think right before I saw you. We sat down with them on an Automation Fair and kind of got the live in-person demo. And so that was really cool. Sick. So I would imagine that they're going to continue to be at conferences and everything else.
So on the subject of PLC programming softwares, this probably question was more for Alex. What is your favorite platform and second, and why?
I would say my favorite platform, honestly,
Be careful. This is a loaded question, Alex.
I like TIA Portal the best. I think the Siemens, that's probably my favorite software to use.
Yeah.
I'm the most familiar with Rockwell, so Studio 5000. And I just know enough about it that it's not painful to me anymore.
Right.
But that's probably my favorite. I think Codesys is doing some interesting stuff.
I think that's really
with the Bedrock platform. That's primarily what we've used there. And I think, no offense to anyone else, but I think the free packages from Automation Direct and Easy Automation
they're free. You get what you pay for.
So you kind of
rudimentary.
Those are. I wouldn't say they're rudimentary in terms of functionality. I think the functionality is all there. It's more just developed in a like 2000s mindset, so like the user interface is a little clunkier.
Well, we pay every year for TIA Portal. We pay every year for the Rockwell Toolkit. You pay a bunch of money for the Bedrock automation to be able to get into everything that they do, and you get what you pay for. Yeah. If you get a free software on a $100 or $200 PLC, they don't have a lot of money to continue to build.
And I think those are more hardware focused companies as well, which,
so
I'm not knocking them at all.
Let's talk about the Bedrock automation program. You have to be like an integrator for them to get access to the software, or how does that?
No, so the software, they have the Bedrock IDE, which is built on Codesys, and you can get that for free. What we did was to participate in their integrator program when we met with them at ICC, and they had just come out with the OSA remote.
Which is amazing.
It's a great product. I picked up an OSA remote, and as part of their package, you get an OSA remote, a seat at the training class, and once you do the training, you get into their integrator program.
Dope.
And that was, I don't know, $4,000 or $5,000 to get the package. Yeah. Or you could just buy an OSA remote for like $4,200 or whatever it was.
Wow. Okay.
But the training
is that what
really
the MSRP is going to be on that little guy?
I think the MSRP for the remote is like $5,000.
Oh, okay. That's a little bit more than I would have anticipated.
And they have a couple versions with different memory setting, like one's 8 gigs and one's 32 or something.
Well, I think with those you pay
a premium. Bedrock has always been expensive, and I actually did a post on LinkedIn saying why Bedrock is expensive, but it's not as expensive as you think when you put it in context of your process.
Yeah. Right.
So
they do a lot of security, kind of really baked in security. Yeah. That is, and they sell a very high end product.
Right.
And there are definitely applications that Bedrock makes a lot of sense to go ahead and use.
Where do you see the OSA remote being used?
I think that would be great in like water, wastewater with remote pump stations and oil and gas, where you actually want a secure connection.
Where you have to have a secure connection.
I've literally seen up in Washington companies where people get in through a pump station connection,
plug into the switch,
get into their actual network at the corporate level, and like there wasn't security on things, and they got into some of their financial systems and like siphoned off some money. Like I've literally seen that happen.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
So to the point where you could have an actual secure connection that you're not going to get into the PLC, and I think we've heard that like Lockheed Martin has one on the actual internet that you can like hack into or try and hack into or something. But
this is live, by the way.
But there's
Dave says you shouldn't go there.
But no, if you go to like the ICS cert, which I think might be defunct now, or there's some changes with the ISC cert website. There's various things like that where companies are trying to let people hack into stuff. I heard it on the internet.
It's public information.
But no, I think there's stuff like that where companies are trying to let, like if I wouldn't put like an Automation Direct PLC open on the network and ask people to hack into it because like.
So let's just make a hard U-turn off of this, Alex. Talking about putting things public, we're in the process of taking our OSA remote with a custom root key and actually standing it up on the internet, and that's something you guys will see from us in the next 2 or 3 months, depending upon how busy we are doing actual work that isn't creating awesome content for you. Actual work that pays the bills so we can afford to buy things like the OSA remotes so that we can stand them up on the internet.
But I think they are, because part of the reason I didn't get involved initially, like 3 or 4 years ago when they came out, was like you had to buy 25 or 30 grand worth of hardware to get into their program, and it was like there's not an ROI on that at the moment for me. And as they're coming out with different solutions, and like the OSA remote for me was the perfect way to get into it.
Right, that's cool.
I'm super excited about the OSA proxy that they have coming out, which is basically like the OSA remote, but as I generally understand it, you can hook it up to like legacy Allen Bradley PLCs, and it basically sucks the code in.
Oh, wow, that's sick.
That is how I generally understand it. They're telling me end of the year that's actually going to be in production.
I'm actually excited about like what I liked about the actual original Bedrock controller was like the back plane was sick, and you know 4 gigabits per second or however fast, like all that stuff is cool, but what I thought was the coolest was a universal IO.
That is really awesome.
That's the coolest part.
Like why is that not a thing on
That's what I ask
if it's possible. So like in some ways, Bedrock has to be a leader in making these technologies available, and then eventually it'll trickle down to maybe one day we'll be able to get Easy Logix, Easy Rack PLC with Universal I/O, and
I'd love to be able to buy a Allen Bradley compact logic and just throw 20 Universal I/O modules on there instead of having to pick and choose which ones we need. And
do you have to set what the I/O is, or will it be able to detect its environment variable and see what the oh, you've plugged in a 4 to 20 here, I see that.
I think you have to configure it.
At
least to say this is going to be an analog point, and then
so it knows what to expect.
What to expect, because you're also dealing with the internal circuitry that you're modifying at that point.
But then at some point, some of these systems, some of these signals, discrete signals, analog signals, start going away in more favor of like connected smart devices and Ethernet IP and maybe IIoT, MQTT, or another one that I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it. Rob Sawicki actually just brought it up on the last podcast. IO Link?
Yeah, IO Link.
What do you know about IO Link?
So in a previous life, which is what I like to call them, I worked for a manufacturer distributors rep who sold like Banner Engineering, Turk, Red Lion, Encoder Products Company. And so IO-Link is like the bottom level of the ecosystem that basically allows you to easily connect sensors and other things into other universal devices.
Right. The way he explained it was it's like HART is for an analog signal, but IO-Link is for a discrete signal.
Yeah.
Basically digital data, metadata over a discrete serial protocol. Or you could also just use it as a regular discrete device, which is cool. But he actually said it was the most exciting technology of Industry 4.0 and IoT. Okay. I thought that was a bit bold of a statement, but any
statement like that would be a bold of a statement. When we're done with this, we're watching that podcast.
Okay, what's your both of your guys' most innovative technology, most exciting technology for I 4.0?
You want to go first? You want me to go first?
You go first.
So I think the most exciting technology is MQTT and SparkPlug-B. And it's got the wow factor. Yeah. So have you seen Arlen's demo?
I just watched their the webinar yesterday. Yeah.
I missed that. I was in a meeting. Sorry, guys. I will watch it soon. But no, so did he do the thing where in 4 clicks and 5 seconds he uploaded 60,000 tags?
Yep.
That's the aha moment. That is literally the aha moment of IIoT. If there is a 5-second clip of what IIoT can do, that should be it.
Right.
We literally need nothing else but that. And so I think it's the most exciting thing. And as Jason was telling us, it's at the moment still gaining traction, and outside of a bunch of remote pump sites, outside of a bunch of oil and gas, it hasn't permeated into everything quite yet. And so right now it's one of those things where you go to a conference, you see it, your mind literally explodes. If you're like us, you're sitting on a webinar and your mouth is going like this because you literally have no words coming out of what just happened. And then you are looking for applications, and there aren't quite a ton of applications there because the hardware isn't quite there. I think Siemens has technically come out with an MQTT SparkPlug-B solution on some of their hardware that we haven't necessarily seen work quite yet. I haven't heard or seen.
Do you know if it's SparkPlug-B? Or are you saying this? Because Walker, he did say that Siemens came out with their MQTT block for S7 line of PLCs.
Yeah, they have a block, but it's not SparkPlug-B.
Okay, it's open MQTT.
Yeah.
But you could theoretically...
You could build the SparkPlug-B layer on top of it.
Okay.
I think, at least in the U.S., we run into the issue of there's not enough Siemens houses to do, and at some point someone over in Europe is going to build the SparkPlug-B block, and that's going to make a lot of sense.
I think that one thing SiriusLink could do, and the community at large should do, is one of the things that's kind of pigeonholed, at least from some companies' perspective, SparkPlug-B, is that it's kind of been marketed as a solution to connect devices to ignition. And I think part of that is obvious because they were first to come out with the modules for ignition. There's been that partnership in the webinar. They're showing it talking to ignition. But it is an open protocol, and we're actually starting to see more companies, more software platforms start adopting MQTT, specifically SparkPlug-B, payload spec, like FactoryStudio, like Flow Software. So it would be cool to see, I think, if
Canary Labs,
right? So if they started to maybe start showing that it's not just a spec to speak to ignition, but maybe, you know, if Walker's attempts are successful, maybe Rockwell might one day see Sparkplug B.
We would love
maybe that. Aviva, or, you know, just every platform having a native language to speak together benefits I 4.0.
It definitely does.
Yeah, I would say that's my biggest frustration in the past couple of years, is that something like Sparkplug B doesn't exist in Rockwell and Siemens, but it exists in an easy automation PLC that's a couple $100. Like,
Which is why Alex made that video. We were on the webinar with the folks from Cirrus Link, and we saw that, and like everyone's head exploded, and Alex, while on there, bought the easy automation PLC, and
for like $149.
It was literally on the way to his house
before the webinar
ended.
Wow.
And it's like, I think that's, like you said, that's like the crux of what IIoT can do. And I understand like the technology and all that goes way beyond that. But I think that was the aha moment for me. And I think that combined with, you know, even the way the Chirp Lab from
Canary Labs,
or the Chirp module in Canary Labs that in 4.0 Solutions did, is like your tags just automatically show up in your historian. It's just like,
wow.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then to go back to a FactoryTalk historian system and have to configure a tag after that, it's like, oh, come on.
So let's walk through that scenario right now. You know, you're Rockwell CEO, you're Rockwell executive, maybe you're product manager for FactoryTalk, and you're posed with the, you know, the community has tasked you with the, you know, putting MQTT Sparkplug B specification as one of your native drivers or supporting that. You know, if you're Rockwell, like, what do you think to yourself? Like, oh, I can't do this now because then I've lost my point of different, like, you know, I'm open, now I'm exposed, like I'm vulnerable. Like, how do you reason that if you're a Rockwell executive?
I don't know. Rockwell is the giant in the marketplace. What they do, everyone else has to follow. And there are people kind of pushing segments of the market in one place, but Rockwell owns so much of the market. If they don't want to put Sparkplug B in there, they don't have to put Sparkplug B in there. And being able to more easily connect and upgrade devices and software and the various different layers of the FactoryTalk Studio, and potentially with the new, what are we calling it, connected enterprise powered by PCT, like maybe with that, maybe Sparkplug B will help push the data between the silos.
Well, I think it actually levels the playing field, because let's say you're Rockwell and you're not supporting Sparkplug B, and you know, a customer has devices that are, you know, coming on, they're supporting MQTT Sparkplug B, and they're like, hey, you know, do I buy FactoryTalk or do I buy Ignition or FactoryStudio, which supports it natively, and then it can just come online? If you're Rockwell, you shouldn't be thinking, no, I shouldn't adopt MQTT Sparkplug B because then now I'm open. You should be like, hey, you know, we support that too. So now that's no longer a reason to go with exclusively one or two platforms. It's supported by everyone. So now you can actually compete on other things.
I think there would have to be a huge mind shift in manufacturing and in industry at large for Rockwell to look at, we're losing opportunities because we don't have MQTT Sparkplug B. Most of the time, you know, in the spec, it's going to say it has to be FactoryTalk. Like, that's the only thing we're having. And I would say, what, 95% of the Rockwell solutions that are being pushed in is because that's what the facilities have decided that they want, is they want FactoryTalk because they like the Rockwell folks, because they have the familiarity with it, because that's what they've always used, because that's what their operators and maintenance people know. I mean, that's why people continue to upgrade and move forward with the Rockwell ecosystem. And there's nothing wrong with that.
I will say, though, that when someone does decide to go Rockwell, then it probably does make sense for them to go all in with Rockwell.
Completely.
Like, use the PowerFlex drives, you know, use the, you know, control logics, compact logics. You know, I don't know, maybe use another SCADA system than FactoryTalk. I don't know. I just, but, you know, then you're going to be you're going to have that ecosystem that they kind of have designed it and really.
The nice thing about the Rockwell ecosystem that we really like is that it all works really well together.
The Enderhausen.
Yep. The E&H, you know, and like when we walked around Automation Fair, You walk around, there are only 2 days. It takes like 3 weeks to get through the entire thing. Like, being able to go see what the ecosystem is like this awe-inspiring thing. And, you know, we sit here on the podcast talking about it, and then you go there and you literally rub up against the director of MES and various other things at there, and you go see the entire ecosystem, and you're no longer in awe of why they own 80% of the market. Or 90% of the market. I don't want to undersell them.
Yeah. So, on a closing question, if Rockwell were one of the major tech companies, like consumer-facing tech companies, which one do you think they would be? Which one are they most like, and why?
Ooh.
I would say they're probably the most like Microsoft.
Okay. I was thinking Microsoft.
I think they're probably in the phase of their trajectory where Microsoft was 10 or 15 years ago.
Okay.
And I think in at least in my world, I think Microsoft's kind of done one of these compared to Apple and everything else that's out there. Like they owned a big segment of things, and I think now they're in their lane and they own that lane. But I think the consumer side of things is, you know, like they're moving into HoloLens and more business-focused things rather than consumer. I think Apple's kind of taken that, and even the mobile devices and all that type of stuff outside of computers.
I think they're probably most like Oracle, because very much to Oracle, you buy into the ecosystem and you stay in the ecosystem, and you do it because it's easy, and the pain to leave the ecosystem is so high. I mean, they make
even more so than Apple, probably.
Yeah, they make fantastic products, but like you get into Oracle or you get into Rockwell, and you're going to stay there because you have to have all this tribal knowledge, like Alex talked about. You know, he spent so much time on you know, the various platforms. Like, you learn all the stuff. Why would I leave to go learn all of this other important stuff for a different platform when I could just stay here on this already really good platform?
Oh man, I'm always you know, surprised by the answers that I get. I've gotten a lot of responses like Amazon, Apple, Tesla. You know, Mike Martinez said Rockwell is its own, and like it is on. He says it's on the level, or like it's comparable in its own right to those tech companies.
No, I would agree with that.
He also works for Rockwell, but I still think that is a very good answer.
Then that is a really good answer, Mike.
But Walker said Microsoft as well, so that makes sense from their kind of ecosystem nature. But
and they make great products, and like they're getting better at integrating everything together. So there's no knock or no diss on Rockwell. It's just
we use a lot of their products. We use a lot of we love their hardware. They make really good hardware for almost every solution.
It's just, I think there's other stuff coming up in the market that 20 years ago didn't exist.
5 years ago didn't exist.
So I think just the overall landscape is one where I think they're going to have to react to some of that stuff or start to lose some.
No pun intended.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Who would you like to see on the podcast for Automation Month that we haven't seen already? Any industry influencers or thought leaders?
Zach, I think you know more industry influencers and thought leaders than we do. Alex wants to continue to see the Zack Scriven media feed on his LinkedIn.
I don't know. Have you talked to the guys at Chasm at all?
No, but Sean, I mean, Sean's great, man. I'm sure he would be down, yeah.
You should talk to Sean. So I know that you were talking about Siemens stuff. Did you?
I want to get more Siemens content.
So like Sean and the folks from Siemens, Bob Meads and IQ Agent, I know that you had linked
I talked to him, yeah.
Did you talk to him? Is he gonna...
I haven't talked to him in a while. I haven't talked to him on the podcast, but I actually went to one of his trainings like a few years back, and right when I first went full time with LinkedIn, he made a few comments, and I think he said he was actually going to start up his own podcast. So
very cool. He does amazing stuff with
AR. Fully AR, yeah.
Yeah. So we were at a thing together at
Tentor.
At Tentor. What was that, like 14, 16 months ago with Chasm, and Bob Meads was there, and the Siemens PLM folks were there. And Bob, we have pictures of all of us looking absolutely ridiculous in the HoloLens. doing the AR and the VR, and he had the iPad Pro a couple of years ago before everything.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I'll have to reach out to Bob again. Thanks for reminding me, man.
Yeah, but no, I definitely interested to hear more.
Vertec guys coming?
Hanny, actually. Hanny Alawana is a senior PM, senior engineer at Irvine, who I used to work with alongside Rob Sawicki, who used to be at Vertec. He was on earlier this week. He's now, gone on the other side of the fence, working for the end user now. Nice. Maybe Titus or something.
Yeah.
I talked to Colby Clegg. Did you guys see that?
No, I haven't seen that one yet.
I haven't posted it, but maybe I didn't really publicize it that much. But yeah, so
I heard that you were gonna talk to him, but we've been on the road for like the last week, and so
yeah, that was cool. That was a great podcast.
No, always excited to be able to see and talk to the IA folks.
The funniest part about that podcast though was at the end I asked him who he'd want to see on the podcast, and he took a while to respond, and then he responded with I'd like to see, the guy who started Wonderwear, like what's he doing now? He sold his company and it come to find out that he died.
Oh.
And he died like laughed. No, I mean, I didn't know it either, but he died in 2012, I think, and long after he had like a really nice house in the beach, and Carl Hoffman, who works at Siemens now, he's telling me like they had like this stream that they couldn't reroute, so like it like went through the house, I think, like they architected some crazy stuff. I think he was doing all right financially, but
if he architected a stream that could only go through his
house.
Anyways,
now I'm kind of exposing Colby, but he felt really bad about it. So he's like, so we got on the podcast the next day, and actually he responded with a different question. So now I'm going to splice the two together.
No, I like it. I mean, it's a good question.
Yeah.
Like, where are the people who?
Well, it's interesting.
Were the leaders of this, 15 years ago.
If you die and people are still talking about you, then you had an impact on the industry.
You had the impact on the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you getting Carl on?
Carl Hoffman?
Yeah.
I would love to get Carl Hoffman on. He's like one of the best industry storytellers.
Oh, yeah.
We could probably talk for like 3 hours.
I think, honestly, just to put it out there, I think if you get me, Carl, Dave, maybe get Walker on there and have a roundtable of how do we get WinCCOA to take over in America. Because have you played with that at all?
Yeah, I love
an amazing product.
Yeah.
But it's just, I think, going back to everything we talked about, I think it's a marketing problem.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think WinCCOA is absolutely fantastic. Mm-hmm. So, Tentor is actually done in OA.
Mm-hmm. Oh, nice.
That is part of the reason we had the Chasm Brewing event.
I think we should follow up on that.
I think something like that would be cool, because that's a product that we've invested in their development kit and training, and it's a great product. It's just there's no market awareness in America for it, and I think I've talked to Carl about that plenty of times.
Yeah,
that would be a fun thing to just get together.
It's a really strong platform, and it's used for the CERN Hadron Collider 1600. Mm-hmm. You can do over like 2,000 servers in a distributed network, which is unlike anything else that I've seen.
It's absolutely insane. Siemens and the guys over in Europe are doing a bunch of energy projects. Like the big projects are being done in OA over in Europe, which is absolutely fantastic. And what does Dale say about OA?
He said it's like you dressed up Miss America in a burlap sack
and brought her to prom.
Yeah, and like with version 6, is it 3.16? Mm-hmm. It's like supporting native JavaScript objects, so they're kind of going more web-based as well too. So that's really cool.
And we built out a bunch, and Corso and I think DMC and some other groups have built out a bunch of stuff on the OA platform to make it much more usable, at least in the
Open
States.
PLC library, Open HMI library. Yeah, DMC guys are really cool folks too. I should have someone from there.
Yeah.
Anyways, guys, thank you guys for coming over to the studio, man. I appreciate all you guys' time.
Yeah,
this is fun.
It is. We'll have to do it again.
Where are you guys off to next?
We're going to go see John down in Marietta, and then I think film some video stuff with him.
Yeah.
And then we're going to go to Vegas and have a great time visiting my parents.
Oh, man.
Mrs. Marcy, we're super excited to see you.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for listening to the podcast. Thank you guys for being on the podcast. Yeah. And, Automation Month, hashtag it. Check out other video content. Check out their channel, Corso Systems. Also follow Dave and Alex on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I'll have that linked below. As always, thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for watching.
No, thank you for having us, Zach.
Thank
you for anyone who managed to listen this far.
Go, guys.
Oh, awesome.